Thank you very much for organizing the whole project, DAMIN, and this conference in particular. This has been for me at least, really exciting days when I learned a lot about things I partly haven't heard about, partly have misunderstood, and partly had contradictory ideas about. This was supposed to be a general conclusion. It's not going to be a general conclusion, it's only going to be some general remarks. A general conclusion for this conference is beyond me. I'm not intelligent, I'm not knowledgeable enough, but I make some general remarks which hopefully will be useful in some sense. This is the title, and this is the invitation. The sort of call for papers, invitation, that was phrased. It's very broad, and it has then collected 14 papers, and I think 22 articles for the future volume to be published. But what holds these papers together? In 2013, a couple of years ago, George made a programmatic statement in a journal called The Eye, which is available online on the DAMIN website, where he says that by the end of the program, I hope that the awareness of monetary history will be greatly raised, especially concerning the countries that until now have been largely overlooked by researchers. And I think that even though the project is not ready, even though it's not by far finished, if you take together the conferences, the publications, the website, and the online accessible things that George in particularly have made, with support of many, many others, this must be a success, even before it has finished. Congratulations. When it comes to a global perspective, we have heard quite a broad range of papers, geographically, chronologically, topically. But how global are we? This is a rough sketch, I think, of what we have covered geographically in these 2 days. And we have covered a large part of the world. However, there is still much to do. And there is still areas to cover. And I have to say that this is, for being a focused 1.5-day conference, this is probably the most global monetary conference I've ever been to. And still, we see how focused we are on the Western world. So there is a lot to do. I'm really, really happy for the Chinese contribution. And as was pointed out in the last lecture or paper, was that I think in a world where that becomes more and more globalized, we need more and more perspectives from multi-identical, multicultural points of view. We need more narratives to go along each other, to try to get a fuller and better picture and understanding of not only monetary history, social history, economic history, political history, science, psychology, etc. Bertrand Russell, said that to understand an age or a nation, we must understand its philosophy. That's probably right. That's probably correct. We are not going to argue against that. But in this framework, in this hall, I think that we can say the same with a different denomination. we can say that to understand the society, we must also understand its money, means of exchange, and standards of value. And to understand monetary matters, we must understand money and its relation to economy, society, philosophy, and broadly speaking, in relation to society and humanity. However, in this conference, there is one aspect which is surprisingly missing. Where are the women? Half the population in history. Through these 2 days, I might have missed something, but I cannot recall one single woman being mentioned in the history of coin production or money production. There are women on the coins, there are women on the banknotes, there are women being rulers, great politicians, etc., etc. But within money production or production of money, they are not there until 1855. That's the first I know, and that's Leah Alborn, who became an engraver at the Royal Mint in Stockholm after her father, who died from tuberculosis, I think. She also became one very, very acknowledged and famous engraver of mints and medals in her lifetime. But we would really, really like someone to get on and write about a gender perspective on the production of money. And I have to say, gender perspectives on the history of money in general, for that sake, is a missing topic. If we look at the technological advances in minting from a global perspective, this conference, I think, has showed this very, very clearly, that this is an enormously conservative history. The method that was introduced in the centuries which we like to call before Christ, were basically used in China all the way with certain modifications, of course, and certain changes, but in practice, the same method all the way to 1887. India to 1840s. America didn't really have that long history, as we talked about at the dinner last night, Dennis, but 1790s, in a way, the official United States of America. In Europe, we have some advances in the 1520s, and then the Industrial Revolution in the 1780s. However, there is not a lot of paradigmical changes in this history. And the same would then, of course, also apply to the products, the coins. If you take a tetradrachm of Alexander the Great and a sovereign of Queen Victoria, and put them next to each other, it's the same concept. They're small, they're round, made of metal, with the sign on. It's a concept that you could basically understand from a lot of angles and a lot of paths of history. And I think this conference has really, really, at least to me, made this case very, very clear. As for China, in Oslo we have a quite famous Chinese collection made by a man called Schutt, who was Norwegian consul and then head of the Chinese customs along the Yangtze-Kiang in the 1910s and 20s. He made a famous catalog and gave his whole collection to the Oslo collection. I have been dealing with this collection on and off now and then as a museum curator for many years. But the sources we are presented with here in this conference were, to me, all new. And it's absolutely fabulous. I'm working on Viking and medieval numismatics and monetary history, or coin history, whatever you would like to call it. But when we see that in 1048 they have contemporary sources describing the process of money production, not only the money production, the buildings, the personnel, how many there were. For example, that they didn't use slaves, they used prisoners. I mean, it's just like cries out for a sociology of minting. And the annual figures are estimated to a staggering 5 billion coins a year in the 11th century. As you said, that might be not correct, but I mean, the enormous capacity that points at is absolutely intriguing. Jens Christian, who talked about the mint in Lund just now, in the 11th century, at the same time, that was so small scale in comparison. Katarina, who talked about the large-scale minting of copper coins in the Russian Empire in the late 18th century and 19th century, doesn't even compare. What does this mean? Does it mean that the Chinese empire was more monetized and were able to produce money and fulfill the demand for money in a society than 11th century Denmark and 18th century Russia? I don't know, but that's a question to be answered. When it comes to the Industrial Revolution, that is probably one of the most important points in the history of minting globally. That has not, even though it has been referred to by a number of speakers during this conference, that has not received the full treatment. However, Mikael Merker is going to do that in a big paper delivered for the volume. So that is taken care of. However, when we see the Chinese, when they do modernize, they don't so like put in 2 or 3 or 4 Ullhorn machines. When they do it properly. They create the biggest mint in the world, so like this, within the scope of a couple of years. And they, again, they make up for an impressive coinage on a daily and annual basis. I have to say that sitting here and listening to all these papers, the history of mass production must be a fabulous point, a fabulous topic, subject for a study, using mint technology and minting throughout history. Again, I'm not going to do that. What is money? Dennis has made the classical definitions for us. However, we have heard several speakers mention commodity money. And if we go back and look at the world map, commodities were being used as means of exchange money in a large part of the world, especially the world we haven't covered. However, also in the part of the world that we have covered. And what I really wonder about, and I work quite a lot with commodity money, but I wonder about how were commodity money being produced? What were the mechanisms behind defining commodity money? Everything from cowrie shells to tea money to cattle, furs, silk, cocoa beans, the whole lot. that is questions which I, having listened to these lectures, papers in this conference, have been much more aware of. And thank you all for that. I have to mention that, I will mention my favorite story of counterfeiting from medieval Scandinavia, and we have some really good stories about counterfeiting from medieval Scandinavia. But in a letter, in a document from 1384, a letter was sent to the local court in Norway from a very remote area, Jostedalen, which is up in the mountains, far, far away from any town. There is a woman that is accused of counterfeiting money when she was paying her tax to the king, or the king's representative. But she was not counterfeiting coins. She was going to pay the tax in butter. But she put Swedes in the butter to make so like it, how do you say that? To become bigger, more butter with, indispensable, we have the names of the men who accused her. Unfortunately, we don't know how it ended, but it gives us a really, really intriguing little point, a little insight into production of commodity money. And probably also a very, very difficult destiny of this woman. So what is the red thread? There's not one thread. There are many threads. I think that this conference has showed us more than anywhere I've ever seen or heard that in a global context, money and production of money is heterogeneous, complex, and multifaceted. Even though it is carried out within a very, very well-defined framework of production. But it's so important, the production of money is so important because it serves and fulfill the need for some universal human needs. Standardization and materialized artifacts that can be used, tangible money that can be used in exchange between people that know each other, that don't know each other, locally, regionally, nationally, internationally, and eventually also globally. I think that what we have seen here, we have seen papers on production of money in a broad sense, modeling money and the use of money, and also, especially today, money in social and political context. There are two themes which I think also has been considered by many speakers, and that is the aspect of identity and trust. And also as identity and trust as universal human concepts, which is extremely important in the history of money. And distortions and collapse, how war is inflicting monetary history and people's behavior. This is running late and we are soon having lunch. So I will run off, but I will say that these are a truly interdisciplinary group of papers, studies. However, they are interdisciplinary in the way that they are parallel studies, most of them. I think we can gain a lot if we take advantage of the opportunities provided by George. He has collected scholars from all over the world based different institutions with different traditions, knowledge, competence. And if we can start talking together and actually sitting down and working together, studying the same aspects, I think we can gain a lot. However, I don't think we should rely totally on George to do this. I think this is a very important thing to think about, that this is an opportunity. He has created an opportunity, or many opportunities, for us to take further. And this, I believe, and this is my personal view, this has to develop organically. People, individuals, scholars, has to take initiatives to take this further. I'm having a meeting with Rachel afterwards, and I really hope this is going to help us to get on a cooperation in the future. We don't know, but we are going to try. We're going to start with a cup of coffee or something, sit down and have a chat, and that is probably or possibly an opening for future cooperation. Some of you have seen this before. Well, Thomas, I love this image. This is 3rd of September 1967 in Stockholm, in Kungsgatan, one of the main streets, early in the morning. The Swedes are shifting from right side to right side driving. And I mean, look at this. And I just think, if the Swedes as a nation, so many people and so many cars, even in 1967 it was quite few cars on the roads. When they managed to carry out this project with hardly just a few accidents reported, there is no limits to what we can do. Again, many, many, many thanks to George, Michael, and everybody, and the museum, and everybody that has contributed to this. Thanks a lot.